Yes.
Sweet. Hello, Anna. Nice to meet you.
And nice to meet you.
This is like time I've had a Zoom meeting like ever. So,
I
so it's really
started
nice.
them for this.
We're all upskilling in ways that we never expected. It's been a very steep learning curve, I think, particularly for me. I mean, we've not had the capacity to even do video link until all of this happened. So we're actually, because of all, we've had all of this upgrading now because of the Rona. So now miraculously we can get video and we can do lots of things. we can't get Netflix. So to my kids, eternal horror. But
my goodness.
But yeah,
right. Life without Netflix.
No, we can't. Yeah, it's probably for the best. I don't think I would get anything done if I had Netflix on.
Yeah. So how are you? You've got a new novel.
How many kids in your family? I do. I was just going to ask you about family, but
I've got 3, and you've got 500 novels. So you have more babies than me. No.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, that's my partner. He's just dropped me off a cup of chai, which is really nice.
I've got my library.
This is the sort of thing he does for me. Yeah, look. There.
He looks after you. You and your writing.
No, I'm not in my writing area. This is one of my boys' bedrooms, and it's the tidiest room in the house at the moment. If we were doing this inside, it would just be chaos because we've got, we have this very small house, and everything's kind of centered around, it's all open plan and it's tiny. So everyone's kind of centered around the kitchen table, and all the kids are working there on homeschool, and I'm working there on admin, and my partner's working there on his stuff.
Yep, we've got the same thing. And, the one table that gets
very crowded. But yeah, always. It's the kitchen table. It's the joy of the kitchen table,
Yep.
Everyone likes to sit around the kitchen table. So yeah.
And even if we've got other spaces for them, they won't go to them. They'll always end up back at the table.
Yeah, I know. Oh, we don't really have other spaces, but they can work in their rooms. Our oldest son is working in his room just because he needs a bit more place to spread out. So yeah, but we have like a storage shed just off the side of the house, and I have enclosed a little area of that, which is where I usually sit and work, writing work. Yeah.
Writing work, yeah. I'm in the one corner this is the corner of the living room so that I can keep it looking reasonable, and then it's just like a bomb hit for the rest of the area that no one shall ever see. But I write here as well. I always have written amongst everyone.
Amongst the chaos.
But they do normally go to school. Or they're not up yet. So yeah.
I was actually writing on the lounge room couch for a long time. I did most of my work on the couch inside last year, but I got such terrible back pain. Like I had to move somewhere else. I had to find another place to work because I ended up with like serious back pain. Ended up having to go to the physiotherapist.
Yep.
So that's don't do that, kids.
No, mine cop it from me because I have terrible spine. I see the chiropractor every 2 weeks, and that's with me doing everything I can to look after it. So they are always copying it from me about how they sit. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. But I have to say, this is one of those things that always occurs to me whenever I hear your name or see you speaking, and I'm the one in the crowd who always shouts out because some of my family live in Daybra, and you're like,
oh my God, that's right. I remember that's how we first connected with each other, was because you said, oh, I know Daybra. Oh my God.
In the middle of the crowd. It was a bit of a moment. I was like, oh, I am now the buffet in the crowd going, right.
No, it's so bizarre because it was like, oh, you know, I'll just mention my hometown and nobody will know where that is because it's like this
Nowhere.
tiny little place out in the middle of country Queensland. And then to hear this person yell out, oh, I know Debra. It was like, oh, wow, that's awesome.
So silly. It's not so little now. I didn't grow up there, but yeah, my mum, they were up at Ocean View.
Oh.
Now they've come down, now they're older and they need to use the scooter and get around. They're on, you know, a quarter of an acre down at the bottom, and but now it's all posh. Now it's like,
what?
It's a little bit landscaped. And there's cafes. There's a cafe with a bookshop.
Oh my God, that just blows my mind.
They've put in like those estates, you know, where they build loads and loads of houses in one.
Oh crap, that's so
near the old
full
vet.
on.
It's a bit strange.
That is super strange. I mean, I spent 11 years there. You know, we moved there when I was about 5 years old, and so I spent most of my early childhood there, and it was really just a T junction. You know, the whole town was just like, you would go over this little bridge, which was Terrace Creek, and then you would arrive on the main street of town, which was just a long line all the way through the middle of town, and then there was a T junction, and the pub, the Crown Hotel, was at the very top of the T junction, so it was like all roads lead to the pub. and then you would go on either side, and on one side was the road that was to go out to the church, and then the other side was to go out into pastureland, and it was all pastureland around there, and it was all creeks. And I remember walking with like my sister and a bunch of other local kids, and we used to go running around in the local creek. We would just disappear for hours. I don't know what, you know, our parents were doing. Certainly not helicopter parenting in the way that we do now, because we used to spend all day picking around in the creek with a stick and finding frogs and
getting
I
ticks.
remember losing my gum boots in the mud in the creek. And then I remember we got chased by a snake. There was like a water snake in the creek, and you know, we used to do all of this stuff hours, days and days. You know, that was our whole holidays.
We just when we go to grandma's, when we take the kids up, they disappear. There's the creek runs down the back of the property. And they just go, and there's always an older cousin, so they've got the cousins ranging from like 18 to 4 or 5, so between them there's like 11 grandkids, and they're just gone. And then you know, a couple of hours later they'll come back, or a little one will come back soaking and screaming, or
of course,
or they do all sorts of things down there, and we just don't want to know. We're busy.
It's much better if you don't know. And also, you know, that was one of the key things about being a kid that I remember, was we had that freedom to just, you know, wander around. There wasn't any place you could go. You know, you could my family going on a picnic with another local family, and there'd been a series of storms in the days prior to. And then as we were finishing up our picnic, another storm started to come over. And when we tried to come back across, we'd kind of crossed over like a, you know, up in dairy country, there's a lot of creeks that have just like got concrete kind of pathways. And we tried to get across the pathway, and we couldn't get back. So we actually had to walk across in, you know, like practically hip deep rushing water, and it was really unsafe.
Not recommended.
No, but you know, that was just what we used to do, is to grow up poking around in creeks and jumping off rope swings into dams and doing all that sort of stuff. It sounds kind of idyllic, but it was also really, really insular and you know,
frustrating when you're teenagers.
And
it gets there is a bit hard.
Really,
so is there a lot of bush? This is my segue. Is there a lot of rural life in your latest book?
Is there a lot of rural?
It's like the dodgiest segue.
That's all right. We take all segues.
Do you have it there? Because the cover is
Um,
amazing.
This is the US cover with the giant bloody knife. And and I just got a copy of the Australian cover the other day, which is amazing. Well, I'll tell you the story about this too. So the woman the artist who designed the cover for the US, her name is Janelle Barone, and she is a Melbourne artist, and she's quite amazing. So she designed this for the US. And we were all so excited about it. And then we were like, I don't know if this is going to work in Australian markets with local librarians. Maybe not. So we actually approached Janelle again about finding an alternative image. So we've actually managed to keep the whole look of the cover with a slightly alternative image, and I'm going to announce that and reveal that that Australian cover really soon. So yeah,
Wow.
I was just thrilled that we were able to keep the same look of the cover, because it's so beautiful, that real pop art kind of aesthetic and those really amazing contrasty colours, and it just doesn't really look like any other thriller on the shelf. So
not like your previous one. Yeah,
no,
really
very different. Very different. Yeah, really different to my previous books. So so yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a change. And
is it a different story?
Go on. Yeah, it is. And you asked me if there was any country. There's no country at all. And in fact, this book is set in the United States with American characters. So yeah, it's set.
Did you do a lot of language research? Sorry, go on. There's a little delay on the audio, so if I keep talking over you, sorry.
No, and my internet connection, it keeps telling me your internet connection is unstable. It's like, yeah, no kidding, bro. Also, there's heaps of wind outside, which for some reason, I don't know, my kids keep telling me having the weather has no impact whatsoever on internet, guys, but we've found that on windy days our internet is not so good. Going back to your question, yeah, it was something I had to do a little bit of research on, yeah, and I asked a lot of questions of people who I know who are from the States, or who have family in the States, but it was more the fact that it's set in 1982, so I had to do quite a lot of research about the kind of the landmarks and what was happening at that time, the history of that era as well. So
1982.
Yeah,
I love that.
So I wanted to. So the book is about.
Tell me everything. I'll try not to talk, because it'll help the internet if I stay very quiet.
So the book. No, I want the questions though. Okay, I'll give you the synopsis-y thing. Okay, so it's set in 1982, and it's about two damaged teenagers who both have had brushes with serial killers in their lives, and they get recruited by the FBI behavioral science unit to interview juvenile serial killers. Yeah. So yeah, I know. Sounds a bit full on already. But then, so they're actually researching old cases and interviewing the young people who were arrested and jailed for those cases. But then, of course, there's an active homicide case that the behavioural science unit is pursuing, and they get kind of caught up in that when they realise that one of the serial killers, the young serial killers that they've been asked to interview, has insight into this new active case. And they believe that the current killer might be a young person, a juvenile as well, who is attacking teenagers. So so that's the premise. So they end up having to go back and talk to this young man who has a long history of murder and is living in an asylum for the criminally insane. And he's the key to them finding out more about the new case.
I'm enthralled. I'm completely enthralled.
He's very clever and he's very manipulative, and it's very hard to figure out whether or not he's giving them information that they can use, or whether he's got some sort of ulterior motive for passing all of this information on. So yeah, so that's it.
Hannibal Little Lecter, Bull Hannibal Lecter. Did you have to do any thinking about exactly what age people are responsible for their own actions in terms of constructions of adulthood?
That's
childhood?
an interesting question. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that in Victoria, the age of criminal responsibility is 10 years old. Did you know that?
No. I should know that. I used to teach this stuff.
Well, one of my kids was involved in youth parliament recently, and that was one of the bills that they were trying to bring forward was to increase the age of criminal responsibility to 14. Because at the moment in Victoria, you can be held criminally responsible for a crime at the age of 10, which is really
interesting. It was 17, wasn't it? 17, like Queensland.
That's the age at which you can be. That's the age at which you can be. Have it recorded and you can enter adult prison. But you can have it. I think you can actually have it on your record at an age below 17.
Things don't.
I'm
disappear.
Not aware of all the legal. Yeah, I'm not really aware of all the legal precedents.
The James Bulger case in the UK is always the one that people wonder about, is how old.
Yeah.
And then how a community deals with it, because there's the locking someone up as a criminally insane or putting them in juvenile detention versus the European model of immersing them in a community to try and, surround them with support to see, and the outcomes that are different between the two. I don't know how it's dealt with in America, obviously.
I actually didn't want to, I didn't want to get into it in too much detail, like the legal precedent around it. I did want to bring up the idea that that personality and inclination is formed quite young, younger than we probably suspect, and that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that people like Bundy started a lot earlier than we had originally thought. In fact, a lot of evidence suggests that Bundy started when he was 14. So that he may have been responsible for the deaths of some younger people in the area where he grew up. So I was interested in pursuing that. I really also wanted to talk about, or at least look at, the idea of what it would be like to be a victim and what kind of impact that has on your psyche. And I'm also, we find serial killers, culturally, we find them really fascinating. And yes, they are very fascinating because I remember talking about this in a class with students, and I do these workshops on writing crime stories. And one of the things we talk about is how do you put together a convincing perpetrator, And quite a lot of the time, people say, oh yeah, let's write about a serial killer. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see the attraction for that, because the serial killer is a person whose mind doesn't work in the same way as a regular person's mind, which makes them highly unpredictable, which makes them fantastic to write, because you're never going to know how they'll react in any given circumstance. So that's really interesting. But I liked the idea of having a protagonist who had been a victim and who knew how serial killers worked, and how their minds worked, and could use that kind of experience as a weapon against the kind of person that they were tracking. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just kind of, wow. I feel a bit speechless about it all because I love watching these shows. Like, I'm a real like Scandi noir watcher. I like watching. I love cold case. I love cold case shows. Like back to like the old ones like Nutrix and The Bridge and all of those. But I don't read a lot of the fiction because I'm actually really easily scared.
Yes.
So I don't understand why I watch them. But I like finding out. I like the puzzle of it. Who did what and what clues have been left. And like I was a Sherlock Holmes fan back, when I was reading Conan Doyle. And I love the puzzle. And I love to know what leads they've left me in, which ones, and trying to figure it out before it finishes because I'm the irritating person in the room who has to know first who did it, what's happening. I'm terrible. I'm horrible to watch TV with.
Ian Rankin is like that. Ian Rankin is like that, apparently. He has been quoted as saying that he is the person who really loves the puzzle. Yeah. The actual where all of the clues are laid down and how to put the pieces together and all that sort of stuff. I like that part, but I actually really much prefer the psychology of it. I mean, to me, crime is a puzzle, yes, but it's a very human puzzle. It's about what brings a person to commit these kinds of acts. Like, what path have they taken in their life that brings them to this point? And also, while the actual perpetrator is fascinating, what is going on in the mind of the detective? I mean, I find detectives really, really fascinating. What is it that makes a person dedicate their life to chasing these people and immersing themselves in this stuff? It's incredibly affecting, and I think you'd have to have a certain kind of personality, a certain kind of psyche or have had some kind of experience that drew you to that, because it's incredibly difficult. I read Mindhunter by John Douglas. He's the guy who basically first brought to light. He wasn't the person who created the behavioural science unit in the FBI, but he was one of the early leaders in that area, and he wrote that book Mindhunter, which was made into that Netflix series. I don't know if you watched it. It was fantastic. I just find that really fascinating, like the kind of the path of his life that brought him to study this stuff and the kind of understandings that he developed. I read that book first when I was in my 20s, and I think that was really the thing that encouraged me to write None Shall Sleep. That was the key book. And other writers who've touched on these kind of horror thriller type areas. I wanted to write a YA thriller that was a bit more gritty and a bit more, I don't know, a bit more like real life, although, not everything in this book is real life either.
Not my real life, thank goodness. But yeah. But you've got to have those deep characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And, all of those people like Thomas Harris and Stephen King, who are writing those kind of on the edge type characters, I'm really fascinated by those characters. And I wanted something that was going to be hardcore.
Yeah, that sounds very hardcore. And the detectives on TV, they never finish their food. And this is just something that always irks me. Like, you go Frost, any of them, they will possibly take one bite of what looks like a really nice sandwich, or they get their food, hands down, they'll be gone and they won't eat it. And every time I'm like, just take it with you, just eat the food, just you
just
could
eat it on the run.
It's the one thing that always gets me. So I'm wondering if do they translate to
They never go to the bathroom either. They never go to the loo. And, that's just the way it goes. Have you ever read Jasper Fforde? Have you ever read, there's a comedy author called Jasper Fforde who wrote a book called Well and Lost Plots, and he actually wrote about that. And he was like, you know, that was one of the things he mentioned in that book. And the characters, he writes about the characters' lives, like, behind the page. And that's one of the things he's like, yeah, I haven't been to the toilet for, 35 years.
Absolutely. I will always have an estranged wife and a slightly older than teenage daughter. I will always have, well, you can escape those things. You've got some tropes don't have to be there when it's a young adult protagonist, thank goodness, but yeah.
Well, you leave out all of the, you leave out a lot of that everyday detail. Otherwise, the book would be 1,500 pages long. So you do have to kind of move things along a little bit.
You do.
But I do get them to finish a meal. They actually do get to finish a whole meal in this book.
I might have to brave it just for that. I am honestly, I'm so scared. So easily. And a book is so much closer. It's so much more of an intense experience than on television.
I remember having this argument with somebody ages ago. Like, is it more, like, what's more affecting?
Book.
Is it reading it and becoming immersed in it in a book, or is it watching it like on a experience? It's like it's massive and it's just coming at you full on, and the music is there to create that atmosphere as well.
But you can close your eyes, and then it's all gone. Like if you close your eyes, the screen is gone. Turn the volume down. But when you're reading, you actually have to read those words or nothing happens. Yeah. And so your brain has to participate, and your imagination is always worse. I have skimmed on occasion. Yeah. Just the odd bit where it's just like, you read like, if I put it further away.
Then this may not be the book for you.
But I have to have it anyway because the cover.
I actually agree with you. I think less is more when you're writing suspenseful stuff. I think the reader can always conjure something that's more horrific in their own mind, because if you make it less specific, like,
yep.
I know that from my own experience that anything that I can think up is going to be worse. And as soon as you see the monster appear, it suddenly releases tension, so you actually want to avoid pulling back the curtain on the monster or whatever that may be for as long as possible when you're writing suspense.
I did try and write something suspenseful. It was an interesting moment. I thought it would be a mystery. I thought thriller sounded great. I wanted to try that. And then I realised maybe it's thriller, it's actually mystery. And then at about 20,000 words, I realised I can't keep secrets. And I just wrote the whole thing out. I had to just dump it all in.
So you just gave everything away in the first 10 pages.
I just gave it all away. But then I realised, now there's got to be something worse and better. And so that's worked out. That worked out, because what I thought was really amazing and intense was actually just not as amazing as I thought it was. So by saying it all, at least that freed me up, because I'm a pantser. So I've just sort of dumped it in, and it was too plotty, knowing what was going to happen. And so I was a bit bored, and it got quite pedantic. So when I just threw it all in, it then just opened up to being something I didn't even know what would happen. So I had to keep going. Do you write like that? Like you need to know who did it, or?
The first 3 books that I wrote, I wrote every series without plotting them at all. I had some ideas in my mind. I had some ideas in my mind, and I jotted down a few kind of ideas, particularly as you get to the 3rd one in a series. It's like, hang on, what are all the threads that I've got to pull together? You're getting way more material than you need.
Yeah, but I've actually ordered a new iMac so that I can edit longer episodes, because normally 20 minutes and my program crashes. So I might, when my new one comes, I'll be able to edit longer chats, because otherwise I can't even do cuts, because it just crashes every time. So I'll be very soon when it arrives, I'll be able to actually edit longer things. And you just have such interesting things to say. I don't know how.
God.
I didn't know this would
How
go
have
longer
you
than
been
2
doing
episodes.
this?
I'm just making shit up as I go along.
Look, I've been really encouraged by the fact that you're doing it, because I feel like I don't know, like the whole video thing are now kind of saying, oh, we should do this and we should do that on video. And I'm just like, I don't even know how that works. So if you can learn it, then I can learn it, everybody wins. But I have not ever really mastered any of this stuff, and I am not a techie person at all. I'm not doing the editing though.
Editing is, I had a misspent youth thinking I'd be a director and a film and television person. So I did learn skills before I went into literature land.
That's very, very handy. I bet you're not regretting those skills now.
I'm thinking my 15-year-old's not sure if I should do TikTok or learn how to do TikTok, because apparently that's the new thing.
I was saying that to my...
It's not good.
I was saying that to my kids, like literally the other day. I was saying, should I get on TikTok? And they were like, no, Mom, just don't go there, Mom.
You should do some funny ones with like the knife and the, because you could totally like do just some, sorry.
I could, I actually,
shower curtains.
I've been thinking about it. But I don't know if that would, I don't know if pretending to stab things with knives will endear me to my boss. Maybe not. It's possible they may think that's a bit out there.
With a sense of humour. Sorry, I'm a terrible influence. Jodie will just be at me. What did you do to Ellie?
I was going to tell you about, like you were saying, you tried to write a thriller and then it turned into a mystery, and I've learned a lot of stuff about that too. Like I think most of the stuff that I've written before now has been mystery, and in fact the WIP that I'm working on now is a mystery. But the thriller is really different. It's got a really different engine, like it's not about the puzzle, really. I mean, the puzzle's kind of nice, but it's really much more about, in a thriller, the villain actually is the person who leads the narrative. In a mystery, you're following behind the detective, and you kind of, they're, it's really much more about them. Whereas in a thriller, it's very much more about the villain acts, how are the detectives going to react, and the villain has to always be like one step ahead, like and be so much more capable and more powerful than the hero. Because that's where you get the suspense. That's where you get the thrills. It's like the villain is just way more capable. And it's quite possible that the hero could lose. That's where the thrill comes in, because you really don't know whether or not and it's much more akin to horror. Like horror is one of the only genres where we actively reward a writer for providing a bad ending. Just about almost. I think in every other book you would expect everything to kind of wrap up in a satisfying way, whereas in horror books that quite often does not happen. At least 50% of the time, horror ends in a bad way.
I don't read horror at all, so I'm just nodding. I mean, Dracula, yes, I do love Dracula. I don't know if it counts as horror, and Frankenstein, but again, not sure it counts. They're all pretty old now. But I do know that I can't.
Dracula and Frankenstein definitely count as horror, I think. Stephen King. Have you read any Stephen King?
Oh, look, I think I read when I was my best friend when I was a teenager was obsessed. So I know a lot about them, and she used to do monologues from them, and she made me watch movies. It's not good for me. It's not good at all. Look, I'm hiding even thinking about it.
I know.
But I but you see, I just think Frankenstein's the saddest novel I've ever read. Saddest novel. And I've got a lot of, I love Frankenstein. It appears in my novel greatly. So, because I just think it's so sad. And Dracula's just hilarious. I love the gender bending and the fluids. And I could analyse Dracula for years.
Yeah, Dracula's great.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the kind of, they're the original Wex, you know. Frankenstein doesn't really end well.
Oh God,
you know,
no.
Dracula.
It's terrible.
There's kind of a
terrible.
Dracula. There's a sense that things kind of wrap up, but you're always still a little bit on edge. Anything could happen, you know, after the characters leave the stage. Like something could reemerge, and horror is a bit like that. You know, it can be. It's quite. I won't say quite pessimistic, but it certainly doesn't. It certainly explodes the idea that we need to have a happily ever after kind of ending to make fiction work. And I think, you know, thriller gleans a little bit of its influence from that genre as well. So
well, I've realised what I wrote is there's no chance it's a thriller. No chance. I think it was a mystery with an unreliable narrator. Almost. She gets more reliable. I'm really not good at keeping secrets. So this is definitely the problem. It's just all going to come out anyway.
I don't think I've ever written anything with an unreliable narrator before. I mean,
neither have I. That's why I did it.
I'm trying to think now. I'm kind of intrigued by the idea. The one that I'm writing at the moment is a little bit unreliable. But you know, at essence, at heart, but a lot of the unreliable narrators that we think of, you know, they believe that they're doing the right thing for the right reasons, you know. So it's
but
kind of an anti-hero.
Keeping secrets from the reader is what I wanted, but not knowing that they're being kept. It was, I don't even know if I pulled it off. It may never get published. It was just like the third potential novel, like down the track one day.
Way down the track.
Yeah, we got to fail up, hey, keep going.
Oh, you know, the best thing you can do is make a mistake, and then at least you know you don't want to repeat that mistake. You can go on to something else. But you know, I do that all the time. I think I've started 2 books in the, you know, between None Shall Sleep and the book that I'm writing now. I started like a couple of different things and thought, oh yeah, I could do that, and then literally like sometimes wrote a few thousand words and just realised that it wasn't coming together. So sometimes, you just have to do that.
It's very cool.
It was a real pleasure to meet you. Hopefully we'll get to see each other again, and nice to see you. Bye.
The number you have dialed has been changed.